What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Get Out There Project podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything outdoors, life, and how they relate to each other, because they go hand in hand. A lot of things relate back and forth within outdoors and life. Today, I want to start off by talking about spring fishing, because it's in full swing currently.
Oh, yeah.
Me and you both have noticed that. So far, I've caught a bass that was probably closing in on the 6-pound range, if not the 6-pounder. And Tate, you caught a what, 5.5-er?
Yeah, 5.5. It was 21 inches.
And so yeah, I mean, like we really try to emphasize on is spring fishing is probably one of the best times to go out and catch a largemouth bass. For a lot of reasons, it seems like the smaller fish just don't seem to move as much or eat as much. Really, just they don't seem to bite as much. So you just kind of find a lot more big fish without having to catch
small fish,
12 to 15-inch fish before that.
Yeah.
So like this time of year, we'll have a stretch where we'll catch it like 3s, 4s, and 5s nonstop. Then spawn will hit, and then everything changes. But right now, spring fishing is in full effect, and we just kind of want to talk about a couple of things. First, and this is a big thing that I like to emphasize on, is your prep. Preparing to fish in the spring is a lot different than like preparing to fish for the summer or for the fall, because at those points you've already been fishing.
Yeah.
So there's no prep other than you got to check your line for frays from the last time you went fishing, or restocking your tackle box because you use stuff for different weather or whatever. This time of year I feel like I like to go through and take my reels off, clean all my reels, check all my line, replace the line that I didn't replace at the end of the year last year. I like to go through and totally make sure that nothing is going to get in my way of catching a big bass in the spring, because I know that this time of the year is when the big bass are hitting more often than in the summer or the fall. It seems to be this time of the year is like you want to be ultra cautious about making sure everything's set perfectly right, so that when you do hook up with that 6-pounder, that 7-pounder, that 5-pounder, whatever, however big it is, even a small fish, you don't want anything to get in the way of you getting that fish in that would fall back and fall to you. Mm-hmm. A fish jumping out and throwing the hook, I mean, that doesn't fall back on you. That's just a matter of circumstance and just a matter of chance. But frayed line that snaps because you didn't check your line, that falls back on you. A poorly tied knot falls back on you. A reel that just kind of busts when you're trying to fight a big fish because you haven't maintenance it right, that falls back on you. And I feel like those are really big things that a lot of fishermen kind of skip steps. Like, it's just like, it's kind of a pain in the butt. It's a pain in the ass, and a lot of fishermen don't like to do it. And so a lot of us find ourselves skipping steps. I would be the first to admit that a lot of times I do. I'll be like, well, this was one of my really good rods last year. Do I really need to go through that? And I won't, and then I'll regret it later. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things that I would like to just, I mean, it's a good habit to get into. And some people take it to an extreme, and some people really whack on it. And that's just one thing I would focus on prep-wise.
Yeah, that's what I would do too. I mean, usually at the beginning of the spring, I usually restring all my poles. Sometimes I try out a different line and see if it works good, if it doesn't, and but usually I stick with my same methods and stuff from going to getting ready. I usually refill my plastics probably around 3 times during the spring, because I mean, it's usually when I catch a fish on one, I'm like, oh, this is useless, and I get rid of it, and I just use a bag pretty much in a day. But anyway, and then I usually clean up my my bait casters. I usually take off the gears, and I put some WD-40 in them, just make sure they're all loose and like good flowing pretty much, and see how it goes. But
yeah, you gotta make sure them bait casters are good flowing all the time. They gotta be flowing real nice.
They gotta be flowing real nice
with that wire in them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah. So that's what I pretty much do. I reorganize my tackle box, and then as soon as spring spawns over, I usually just go right into summer fishing pretty much.
And let me just say this: when it comes to relining your poles and all that, there's a reason why you go to a fishing store or a place that sells fishing gear, and there's line that's $20 and there's line that's $5. In a lot of cases, sometimes it's a lot of brand name stuff in a lot of instances. But when it comes to fishing line, I've always rather be safe than sorry. Because if it falls back on buying cheap line that gets frayed super easily and you end up losing your fish, then that falls back on you. And so spending an extra $10 on line just so that you don't have to reline your pole and lose a ton of line throughout the year, it seems to be worth it to me instead of going out and spending $10 on line every month or so. You spend $20 in the spring and you're probably set at least until the fall.
Oh, yeah.
You know? But that's just me. I'm a real big believer in retying knots, checking line, cutting off frayed line, just using good line, good knots, and not really putting anything up to chance, and controlling any variables I can control when I'm out on the water. But now that you've finished your prep, you get to go out to the water. And so before you even get into what to use, you got to know where to fish.
Yeah.
So this time of the year, it's really weird. Everything's dependent on what fronts are coming in and what fronts have left, and what if you got rain, if you haven't, water temp. It's crazy. So what typically happens is a lot of these fish in the spring they'll come up to shallow water whenever the sun's out and the water's starting to warm up, because it doesn't take shallow water as long to warm up because there's less water to warm up shallow than there is deep. So they'll come up and they'll hold tight in structure typically, or if there's any weed beds that are still there that aren't dead, they'll hold tight in those. That's where I've always caught fish in the spring, in cover and weeds. And it's harder to find the weeds because the weeds haven't come up yet. And so you'll know when you're running your bait through and you pull it up and there's chunks of actual green weeds up instead of brown dead weeds. And that's a good place to cast. If you've just gotten like a cold rain, or like it's dipped from like 50-degree weather to 20-degree weather, you know how winters are around here, or spring is around here. Sometimes they'll go back out and they'll suspend about mid-depth, 8 to 10 feet, depending on the depth of your pond, but they'll just kind of sit and suspended in water. A lot of them will. Some will stay held tight against rocks, dead sticks, any cover, thick weed, like thick weeds, anything like that. But it's just kind of weird. You have to really study up on the way that the bass work in certain weather, and the way that they move, and the way that weather affects them, and that's going to be how you depend on looking at the forecast, looking at what the last couple days have been like, and then going out and deciding how you're going to throw baits and where you're going to throw baits and what baits to throw. And that's where we get into what baits to throw.
Yeah.
So I'll let you take on.
Yeah, so I usually, during the spawn or pre-spawn, I usually throw, obviously plastic. Sometimes I throw a spinner just to see what happens. Because, I've caught some fish on spinners, but they're usually not that big. Around this time, they're usually the little small ones that are a little bit more active.
Yeah, once you get... right now it's just kind of weird because we're bouncing from 30 to 50 to 30 to 50 to 30 to 50. Yeah. Once we get up into the steady 40s, 50s, and 60s, when we're in that range, spinners really kick in because bass are cold-blooded. If you didn't know, you should know. Yeah. As a fisherman, as just a normal person, you should know that fish are cold-blooded, and so cold water makes them more sluggish. Yeah. Because their blood is super cold. And then once it starts to get warmer up into the 50s and 60s, that water, your blood's coming up and they're going to start moving around a lot. Into the 70s, which is where they had spawned. Into the 80s, which when you're in the 70-80 range, they're still moving around a lot. It's not too hot. But once you start to get up in the 90s and 100-degree temperatures, they start to slow down again just because their blood's so hot. Yeah. It's like when you get a fever, you don't want to move. Uh-huh. It's the same with fish.
Yeah, so I usually throw a bunch of plastics at the beginning, try to bounce it right in front of them or something like that, get them kind of pissed off. And I caught my big one this year off of it was like a 10-inch, what was it, a 10-inch,
worm?
It was a worm, but it was
I didn't know you caught that on a worm.
Yeah, it was like a dark blue worm. It was, and so he took that, and I wasn't even paying attention, and I was on my phone. I was getting a phone call actually, and I saw my line start
What is up
going
with
out.
you catching
Dude, I
fish?
swear to God, every big fish I
It's
catch,
like
I'm
me-
just not paying attention.
It's like me catching fish while I'm pissing.
It's like when
every time I'm out of the pond and I start pissing while I'm fishing.
yeah.
I always hook up and taste. It's like a thing. Every time we're out fishing, if I start pissing, everybody knows I'm catching a fish.
Yeah.
Every time he gets a phone call when he's out fishing, he's probably catching a fish. It's the dumbest thing.
Yeah, but it's also like that for deer season. Like literally, if I'm getting a text message and I'm looking down my phone on Instagram and I look up and boom, there's 10 deer right in front of me. I'm like, where the heck did you
That
guys come
seems to
from?
be a common trend. You
Yeah.
close your eyes for a second,
Yeah.
or you're not paying attention for a second, then all of a sudden they pop up and you're like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and it's like the 10-second
Old
gap
ghost
that you
deer.
weren't paying. Yeah, seriously.
Old ghost deer.
But yeah, so I usually throw that or a blue craw or something dark. Usually, I usually don't throw anything light unless the waters are really really clear, which is very rare around this time of the year. But
Depends on your surroundings.
surroundings. Yeah.
So what I use a lot is I stick with a very basic set of stuff that I will use this time of year, and it's typically is creature / craw, like soft plastics. The biggest one that I've always had success with, I caught numerous 6-pounders in the spring on, is Reaction Innovations. It's a sweet beaver. Or sometimes I'll even go with the smallie beaver because sometimes the too big of a presentation this time of year is just doesn't work. And the thing is you got to be patient because the fish, it's cold. They're not willing to really go out and chase. So sometimes you got to present it a couple different ways from a couple different angles before they even come out and hit it. But it seems to be black and blue and Reaction Innovations beavers is what I always catch fish on this time of year. Run them really slow, a little pop, or a little just lift and drop, but super slow. Go from a couple different angles on every spot that you think they're going to be at, and the hit's just like they're swimming. This is a fish.
Is that the fish?
This is your bait. They're swimming. It's just like a pull,
Fish don't swim.
a pull, and then they'll start to swim off. And you really got to give them time to really. Once your line hits tight, though, give them hell.
Oh yeah.
Give them the biggest hooks that you ever gave in your
Oh,
life.
yeah.
That's why I was.
Pull them out of the water.
I'd rather rip their lip off,
Yeah.
pull up just a fish
Yeah, a
lip,
souvenir.
than to not set
So
the
you
hook
can
hard
prove
enough
that
and
you
then
had
you
a
miss.
fish.
But it's still timing's everything this time of year. But yeah, the Reaction Innovations craw is a huge bait that I love to use this time of year, and that would be the biggest. Texas rig it, not too heavy a weight, just because you're moving slow, so there's no need for it, and the weeds aren't bad and whatever. What else? Jerk baits tend to work sometimes. Might still be
Adam Murray uses jerk baits
a
all the
little
time
cold
and has
yet.
a lot of success with them.
Yeah, I remember you got into
Especially
a kick. You got into a kick a couple years ago.
Yeah, I
Well,
did.
what? 2 years ago?
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
especially, I don't know what's going on, but the moss this year is different than it was in the past. Like it's very mossy on the bottom, so it's really hard to use a jerk bait because when that just drags kind of on the bottom when you jerk it. There's shoot, what's it freaking called? There's treble hooks on them. So
I think
there's
part of
hooks up
the
stuff.
I think part of the moss problem is there's never really a hard
There's no really hard freeze.
because it would freeze and then it would thaw and then it would freeze and then it would thaw.
There was only one day that was like negative. I think like
negative temperatures. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it
negative
wasn't even that bad, huh?
Yeah.
But like we'll sit here and preach. We could sit here and preach about spring fishing all day. How great of a time it is to go out
Yeah.
fishing. How it's the best time to go out and catch big fish. How patience is key. Making sure your rods and reels are good. But the biggest thing, and we could sit here and tell you every bait that we've ever used in the spring that's worked and that we caught fish on. But the biggest thing is going out and figuring out your pace, what you like to use,
Yeah.
and what you're going to catch fish on. And don't. I mean, you can trust what we say because we've proven to have success with it.
Mhm.
But don't just go out there and say, okay, Kale and Tate, the Heartland Outlaw said to go out and use this, this, and this. So that's all I'm going to bring. That's all I'm going to use. Because
If you don't catch fish, you're gonna blame it on us.
I've always, no, not that. I've always been one to take other people's suggestions and use them. But I also want to try to think for myself and figure out what strategies I personally like to use and what suits the way I fish more. So like when people go out and say, oh, in spawn, use a drop shot. Well, I'm not a finesse fisherman guy. And so a drop shot doesn't suit the way I fish as a Texas rig would, where I can sit there and cast a Texas rig out. No, I know perfectly how to use it, how to work it, and put it right on those beds, and eventually you're going to piss them off enough that they're going to come up and take it. So what I'm saying is go out, figure out how you like to fish, what baits you like, whether it's crankbaits, whether it's Texas rigs, whether it's finesse, where like wacky and drop shots, whether you go out and you want to throw Carolina rigs deep, whether you want to go out and throw square bills all day. I mean, every fisherman has their niches, and they all seem to have success at some point. And there's times where I go weeks without having very much success, where I go out and just catch a bunch of 12-inch fish or none. I go out and get skunked like 3 trips in a row, and I'm like, what's going on? Well, I sit there way too steady on doing the thing that's always worked. And I think that's kind of a good point where fishing applies to life.
Good.
Is people can sit there and tell you what to do all the time.
That's working for them.
That's working for them, but if you go out and you just do this, this, and this, that's what's worked for them. That's what got them to that point. Well, then, I mean, it might not work for you. And, I mean, you don't know what fits the way that, like, your lifestyle or your fishing style. Like, nobody can tell you what fits your style of living or your style of fishing better than you can tell yourself and better than you can go out and find out yourself. And I just think that even in, like, the most specific things where we're sitting here specifically talking about what to use and what to throw in the spring where it can just relate back, it's just crazy to me. And that's what I like about this podcast is we can sit here and we can be talking about fishing 1 second, and then all of a sudden it clicks and it's like, oh wait, that can relate back. And that's just something that's crazy about outdoors, and it just blows my mind every day. It's just like that's why I think it's so important for kids to get outdoors and fish and hunt and at least go out and explore, because I think that so much makes you a better person, or like certain characteristics, it like builds those. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
But right now, I don't even know where I was going now.
No, me either.
Here, we'll play a round of our game. Give me a spot. And I'll give you a lure.
What do you mean? Like
give me a specific spot. Like a set up an environment where I'm fishing at, and I'll tell you what I'm throwing.
All right.
We're gonna quick fire these.
Let's see here. That's like environment, like climate too.
Yeah, you can throw that in there.
All right.
Time of the year would be better.
Time of the year. I'm gonna do climate too.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. First of all, let's say it's 20-mile-per-hour winds.
Yikes. Okay.
All right, 20-mile-per-hour winds.
I already know.
You're on probably a 3-acre pond, right?
Oh, so
and you're fishing in a corner right now that has rock in it. It's rock and probably around 40 yards out. Oh, and it's probably around 5 feet deep, 5 to 4 feet deep.
All right.
All right. Yeah.
I got any vegetation?
Yeah. Let me.
Oh, keep going.
Yeah, okay.
I said rapid fire.
So anyway, and so then you got what's it freaking called? Yeah. No. What's it called?
Rapid fire, Tate.
That's not called rapid fire, kid.
What are we doing? You're taking forever.
Okay, so you got rock, right?
Yeah, rock.
And it's probably the water's probably around 70 degrees, 65 degrees.
Spinnerbait. Okay, cool.
Nailed
it.
Right.
That's what I'm throwing. I don't care.
That's what I was gonna say because I was
spinnerbait, swim jig, or square bill so that I can throw it.
That's what I was gonna say because it's 20 mile per hour.
Yeah, I ain't throwing no plastics.
You want to freaking see the line, like it's gonna be tight the whole time. So yeah, that's what I was gonna.
All right, let me give you one. 90 degrees.
Rapid fire, Kale.
Okay. 90 degrees out.
Yeah.
You're sitting off a point on a boat.
Yeah.
It's about 20 feet deep it inclines back up to zero, obviously. Yeah. You're about 30 yards out.
Oh, yeah.
It's 90 degrees.
Uh-huh.
You got weeds at the edge, but there's no weeds between you. Yeah. What are you throwing?
I'm throwing chicken liver, catfish.
Whatever. I know damn well you ain't catching no catfish because we don't ever catch catfish.
I caught a couple catfish by myself.
Yeah. Well, if I'm there, we're screwed.
Yeah, we're screwed.
Or if you're with me when I'm catfishing, we're screwed.
Yeah. All right.
Never works.
So say it again. You kind of said it too fast.
20. Okay, so you're sitting at off of a point. It drops steady like a ledge down to 20.
Yeah.
What are you throwing? It's 90 degrees out.
It's 90 degrees out. And there's no vegetation.
I don't think you've ever thrown this lure in your life. The one that would probably work the best.
It's freaking
I bet you would just take off in your boat and leave.
I'd be like,
Go to
"Well,
a
this
different
ain't
spot.
a good spot."
Go to a different spot.
Shoot, let me. I would throw some sort
answer is Carolina
of
rig.
a Carolina rig, something like that.
Have you ever thrown a Carolina rig?
I don't even know what the frick that is.
It's where it's like a Texas rig except your weight. You got like instead of a bullet weight, you have a weight up higher up on your line, and it's like one of them egg weights, and so that it sits there in your.
I'm telling you what I would throw is chicken liver. I freaking don't throw anything in 20 feet of water.
If I'm catfishing, I'm throwing a bluegill cut in
all the
half.
ponds that I fish, the deepest pond that I've ever fished is the one over here. The one that they supposedly West Pond.
West Point.
Yeah, West Point. I'm pretty sure that pond is around 70 feet deep.
No, it's not.
Maybe 100.
I've had a fish finder out there, and it's only the deepest I found was 52, and it was like a hole because every other spot was like 45 around it, and then there was like one drop to 52, and
that's
that was
the deepest pond I've ever fished in.
And there's rumors that there's a skid steer or bulldozer or something that they didn't get out.
Couldn't get out, yeah.
But I don't know if there's any truth to that or not.
Diving before I die down there.
Yeah, once you get that low, I don't think you'll be able to see much. But
yeah, I will.
40 feet deep in a muddy ass pond.
Just gotta put my good contacts in.
Come up, pull up like 4 walleye.
4 walleye.
That's crazy though. I still can't. Remember when you screwed up your walleye catch out there?
Yeah.
So this is a great story. We're sitting out there on my little 8-foot boat.
Yeah,
that thing's great.
Cramps.
Hey, that boat's great. First of all,
pretty cool. But
and so we're gonna jig for walleye because we had heard there's walleye out in this pond. It's like 40 feet deep, and people have been pulling walleye out of there. And so we're like, okay, let's go jig for walleye.
When was this?
Like 4 summers ago.
I don't know about when. Like, was it
middle of summer?
July.
Yeah, probably June or July. And so we went to Bass Pro. We got these little minnows that are in the bag with like the dye in there with them.
Yes, it was. Yeah, those
the
things are
goofy
awful.
stuff. Unless you got a hit. So we get out there and we drop our jigs down. A couple seconds in, he's like, "Oh, there's a hit," and like I was like, "Okay." So once you get it down there, you gotta let him take it a little bit. He's like, "Oh, there's a hit!" Throws his rod up.
Throw it right up.
Seconds. I even saw his rod bounce the first time, and literally a second after it bounced, said, "There's a hit," and throws his rod up.
I'm thinking it was
I
think it was a crappie of some sort.
At 40 feet deep.
I probably ripped his freaking mouth.
It wasn't a crappie. I'm telling you right now.
My little Zep coat.
It was probably a walleye, and you screwed it up.
Yeah.
And then so we didn't have a bite the rest of the day because he screwed it up. He scared all the fish away.
Yeah, freaking hook set.
Freaking
made a wake.
Okay. Your turn to give me one.
All right.
This is our last 2 rounds.
All right.
Give me a good one.
All right. Let's see here. All right. You're on a dock.
Okay.
All right.
Never made faces.
The dock is a floating dock. That is now in the middle of a pond. To get to it, you have to go walk on a rope to get out there.
All right, so we're getting really creative.
You got a and you got a backpack that can hold your rod because you're walking across the rope.
Okay, I don't need all those details.
No, I'm giving you the details.
So I'm out in the middle of a pond.
Yes.
I'm basically on a boat.
Yes.
What you're saying.
Yes. And there's 100 yards to one side of the pond, and there's 100 yards. So you're in the freaking.
I'm right in the middle.
Hell of this pond, right?
Yeah.
And you're freaking okay. So you're sitting out there. There's moss all around you, everywhere. It's around 30 feet deep. All right.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm gonna do.
No weather.
You're using a Zepco.
I'm not. First of all, no, it never happened. I never use a Zebco. But the answer is a marlin plug because I'm guessing we're in a saltwater pocket in the middle of a freshwater pond, and there's definitely a marlin just chilling out there. So I'm throwing a marlin plug, and I'm probably gonna catch it. Either that, or I'm throwing a hula popper because I'd never throw that, and I'd never be in that situation, or a double Colorado because I'd never be in that situation. It's something I would never throw.
You know what I would throw?
What?
Nothing. I'll just go swimming.
Through the weeds.
Yeah. Then they're
right. Okay, let me give you one.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so you're at what's the name of that? The deepest part of the ocean, the Marianas, something Trench, the Marianas Trench or something. Yeah.
The Bermuda.
So you're
Triangle?
sitting on a boat over the top of the deepest part of the ocean.
Is it a John boat?
It's the thing would be tipped over before you got there.
That's the only boat I actually
So you're sitting out there on this boat.
Yes.
And, yeah. So you're sitting there. What are you fishing for, and what are you throwing? In the middle of the ocean.
In the middle of the ocean, chicken liver, shark. Oh, and maybe a squid. I might pull up a squid.
Why would you throw out of everything you could throw for a shark? Why would you throw chicken liver?
Chicken liver is the best thing ever. Or I'll throw a whole deer carcass out there. But what kind of line will I have?
Whatever. It's your setup.
It's my setup. Okay. I'll freaking get a freaking tarpoon.
A tarpoon. It's a harpoon.
It's a harpoon. And I would freaking shoot it at a freaking whale.
Oh my goodness.
Dude, I would shoot it at a whale.
You know what I would do?
What?
Just bear with me on this one.
Uh-huh.
I would take medium heavy rod, 7.6.
7.6.
Probably 20-pound test line on it.
Nice.
Actually, you know what? I bet there might be some woods down there. I'll go like 50-pound test or 50-pound braid just in case. I don't want anything to break off my line.
Yeah.
I'll probably use about a half-ounce bullet weight Texas rig, 10.5-inch worm.
That's what I would do.
I think the odds are, I don't know how deep it is. It's like a couple of the Empire State Building deep.
Yes.
I think sitting down there, the largest largemouth bass you've ever seen in your life, because I don't think salt can sink that far. So I think it's fresh water down there. He just chills down there, and then he'd die on the way up. It'd be really sad. I'd just be pulling up dead weight like a 30-pound.
All right, this is what I'm thinking. Throw a hula popper.
Ah, yep. All right, guys, that's enough of that game. That's called. What's that game called? What would you throw?
No,
That's no.
You find a better name. That's awful.
What would you throw? That's exactly what the game is. Is
No.
what would you throw?
No.
But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe below. Tate, tell them what to do. Comment, subscribe below. You gotta tell them too.
I was gonna say rig it right, rig it tight.
Oh, that too. You can tell them that.
Like, comment, subscribe, push the freaking thumbs up.
Oh, the bell.
The bell. That's
Thumbs
what it's
up's
called.
like.
Yeah, that's the like thing.
Be sure to rig it right, rig it tight. Keep living that outlaw lifestyle. We'll catch you next time. We love you guys. See ya.